Welcome to the Berks Homes podcast, the business of building homes. I'm Katie. I'm here with my brother Ben, and today, in honor of just having our annual State of the Company meeting and having to start fresh with the new quarter, we are talking about rocks. And rocks are an exciting time for everyone. It's time to look forward and figure out what we are going to accomplish in the next 90 days.
Why don't you take everybody through this maybe like 2-week process of the cadence?
Okay,
real
yeah.
quick.
Yep.
So meetings and,
Sure.
all that stuff.
Yeah, we talked about the meeting cadence and having your L10s that culminate to your quarterly meeting. So at your quarterly or annual meetings, you are kind of reporting what you accomplished the previous 90 days and saying, okay, let's take a pause and figure out what we want to plan to accomplish in the next 90. So we have a pre-planning rock meeting where we go through and really look at our 1-year goal, 3-year picture, and look at what we want to accomplish in the next 90 days to get us closer to those long-term goals.
Right. That's at the EO level.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our...
And then we take that plan to our teams and say, okay, what can you do to contribute to this overall goal that we have for
after
the year?
the company meeting.
Yes.
Right. So it's kind of like a 2-week process.
Yeah. What ends up happening is the company, it says 13 weeks, but it's really ends up being 11.
Mm-hmm.
By the time you report on what you accomplished and then determine what the next quarter's looking like, there's a kind of a 2-week gap in there where it's just making plans and looking ahead after reviewing what you've got completed the previous quarter.
And the critical piece is getting that overview from the executive team, because you got to start with the high level goals that we feel like we want the company to accomplish.
Correct.
Before the departments can kind of finalize their stuff.
Yeah, and typically that company rock is applicable to the majority of people. Everyone has the ability to impact it positively in some way, but you might not be able to translate your own personal rocks directly to that, but maybe you can think about how you don't take away from people who can impact it. So there's a lot of communication and a lot of strategy that has to go into setting your rocks. So that's what we want to talk about. How do you be intentional with your rock setting to get the most out of it? So probably now is a good time to talk about what a rock is and why we keep saying that word over and over again.
Yeah, rock. It's a goal.
Yeah. So
basically,
yeah, the idea is I think there's, the story is if you've got, a jar, you want to put the biggest things in first, which would be your rocks. So you're setting aside intentional time to work on the big things.
Mm-hmm.
Then it gets filled in with pebbles, which is, your small projects, your job. Sand is things that I think take away from your day-to-day, the surprises, and then water's the rest of it, just filler pretty much. So that's kind of where the concept, I really just hacked that up, but you get the idea, you know what I'm saying? Sounds
like it makes sense.
But the point, the takeaway from this is the rocks are the big things that will help you get what you need accomplished, complete in the 90-day period.
And the assumption is, and I think it's a correct assumption, that we wouldn't really be accomplishing great things without that intentionality.
That's the point.
We would just say, well, we have this goal, so go do everything possible to get to this goal. If you didn't break it down into those rocks and on the individual level saying, what am I doing to attain the big thing?
Right.
Then it wouldn't happen.
Exactly.
And so I think that's probably the best part about that 90-day cadence is that you're striving for something specific.
Yeah.
And, we've done a good job of getting people on board and thinking about it and wanting to filter their job requirements through that lens of like, well, there's the daily stuff that is never a rock, but then it's like, how do I need to affect change or accomplish something that's a company goal? And so that's important. So we had the company meeting, and last week I was in the torture chamber, right? I had 3 days of
3 days straight,
all day stuff. So we had our executive quarterly meeting on Wednesday, and I kind of like this, honestly. Like I wouldn't have said that before, but it just worked out where a team member who's remote, and so he was in town for Friday's company meeting. And so we jammed our department meeting into Thursday. And I was like, I probably would do that again because now I'm literally smack dab in the middle of it. On Wednesday, we talk about what we're going to say to the company on Friday.
Yeah.
We set our rocks. It's fresh in my mind. Wake up the next day, go over it with my team, and then we're on and running.
That's so great.
So they knew in advance what we were going to be setting for company goals.
Yeah.
Timing of it, that's fine. I know you have yours on Friday, so you're within a week, which is, standard.
Well, when you talked about this the last time, I got so hyped. I was like, that's such a great idea. We should totally do that. Not even thinking about my poor team being the people that single-handedly put together and carry the company meeting.
They
cannot.
Your department can't do it. There's no way.
Right.
I mean, everybody should have a mandatory vacation day on Monday after the company meeting.
I know, huge shout out to my whole team.
Yeah,
what a fantastic job everybody did with the planning and the executing of the company meeting. That was awesome.
Yeah.
So all that being said, we take a little breather after the annual.
And you should. But for me, it was really good because if something's fresh in my mind, I have a lot of energy around it.
Yeah.
It's hard to get the engine started, a week or two later. So then Friday was the company meeting, and it was cool because I didn't ask the team to set rocks on that day. We planted the seeds, we talked, we nailed down the overarching big things that we want to accomplish.
Yeah.
And then I just said, let's by next Friday, so this Friday, we need to have them set.
Yeah.
But it gave them that time of like, I think they all could just say it right now, even though, they have until Friday. And so it was really good to, I think, for them to walk into the company meeting like, oh, I know on a deeper level what's going on.
Yeah, that's great.
And you can do it the opposite way. It's totally fine. It just worked.
Yeah.
And what was I going to do on Thursday anyway?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, I was gonna be preparing for the company meeting and whatever. Everybody's busy. So with that being said, SMART is a acronym for building rocks.
Yes.
Right.
Well, let's back up for a little bit.
Okay.
How you even get to what it would be. Okay.
Oh,
so
okay. Yeah,
we talked about the fact that the company rocks that get announced at the quarterly meetings are the lens that you should be viewing, setting your own rocks. Okay. How can I help company reach that goal in the next 90 days? If you don't have something specific to contribute to the exact rock, you don't want to take away from somebody who does. Meaning one of the company rocks is selling by drywall stock. And so for specs. So that means that you don't want to set a rock that would hinder the ability to sell a quick move-in in the next 90 days.
Right.
You want to keep the sales consultants freed up, the superintendents freed up, the detail carpenters freed up to be able to close these homes and get them off the books. So that's one way that you're setting rocks. The second way that you set rocks is by creating an issues list. Every quarter. You take everything that's on your VTO or your agenda that's open items, things that keep coming up in your L10 meetings that you haven't solved yet. And you add them all to the list. And you take the huge list that you come up with, say, what's going to prevent me from doing my job better, properly, or what's an issue I have right now. Add that to the list, and then you've got an overall view of things that could contribute to the company over the next 90 days.
Yeah.
So, right, those are the two ways.
Yeah, we did that. Yeah, we built our issues list, and then we did the keep, kill, combine
Yes.
activity that is just, like pulling out your
Torturous.
fingernails.
Yes.
But the end result is wonderful because you have this consolidated list and of things, and everybody's contributing through the lens of what are the most important.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean you eliminate its long-term, short-term, right? So you can kick things, into another meeting, another quarter.
Yep. Another to-do.
Yeah. But you start with that big company rock or rocks in mind, and everybody's looking at themselves. Is something that I can do? Is there something I can do to move that forward? And when you lay it out, it does look beautiful.
Yeah.
When you see,
it does. It rises to the surface pretty easily. What should be the next move?
Right. Now, one of the things. So you talked about the guardrails of being sensitive to others in the company and what they have on their plate.
Yeah.
And you talked about a little bit with communication. So this week should be high communication.
A lot of talking about what capacity other people have.
Right. Like maybe last year, I feel like there was a time where all of us needed, we had these big priorities all around IT.
Yeah.
I'm going to go do this. And all of a sudden, the technology team was like, well, how am I going to build a rock?
Don't throw your rocks at other people.
Yeah, don't throw your rocks at other people. That's a great way to say it. So it's those guardrails of being aware of what other people are working on, what they need to do.
We did this exact same thing to Joe, our creative director.
Yeah.
The first quarter that we practiced with our rocks, we set some audacious goals, and it ended up that every single rock that everyone on the whole team made depended on the creative team to execute on it.
Yeah.
So Joe accomplished none of his rocks and most of everyone else's.
Yeah. He came through for everybody else.
Yeah.
So and that always just takes this cycle to get good at it.
Right. And what we all learned, both the EO on my team and everyone I'm hearing from going forward, is the key to this and the way to avoid doing that is making sure that one of your rocks, well, the first one when you work on a project is the plan.
Yeah.
So it's laying out what resources and timing it will take to actually implement whatever your end goal rock is. So it should always have a plan first and a rollout or execution second.
Right.
So, and that's where this communication is coming in. What you're saying, oh, all right, am I in a planning or an executing rock mode this quarter?
Right.
And
there's a lot of fact gathering.
Yes.
Necessary.
And if you're talking to people and communicating about this 90 days ahead of time, then they can plan to have time and space to help support you in the second 90 days to do it.
Yeah. And it layers once you get, the different levels of departments involved, where you might say that this was a great example. There was an activity identified that would be in my department, and it was a great rock at the EO level. However, I was like, I'm not going to do that. That's going to be one of the director's rocks.
Right. Yeah.
That's a perfect rock for them. I'm not going to put it on my list. I'm only putting on what I'm doing. Yeah. And that I'm in a unique spot because I have land and operations. So, there's not as many resources around the land piece, but most of the time, I think if you're executing at a high level, it's your rock, but a lot of the heavy lifting is going to be on your team, and they build their rock around your rock, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I think using that lens of priority, that's what they say, right? Top business priorities for the next 90 days. Yes. In a nutshell. Yep, that's exactly right. So if you just say that phrase over and over and over, it makes it pretty easy to identify what matters the most. Yeah. And when we set the company rocks, we're looking at what will increase sales, what will decrease direct construction costs, what will get us more land. Training and development. Exactly. Yeah. So that's the lens that we're looking at setting the company rocks from. And so a lot of the things that we're talking about
are rocks that are set at the home office level,
Mm.
but there is a difference then on how the region personnel would set a rock.
Right.
But with that same exact lens, so if we don't have a process or a policy kind of written out or trained on, it's a really good opportunity to explore and give feedback to your coach, for example, on something that we might need to impact one of those areas if we're not able to contribute directly to the company rock.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
At some point, your most valuable role as a regional employee is to, build your rocks around helping the home office, because that's going to have a huge impact.
Or even testing some of our philosophies. Say,
right.
Okay, we have trained on this. Well, let me prove out in the next 90 days why it might not work the way you think it does.
Right.
And give that feedback.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity for collaboration then on the regional and clubhouse side too.
Going back to like the rock time management thing, there's kind of like I don't know if it's set in stone, but what they recommend that you dedicate your time to.
20% of your week.
20%. So that's 1 day a week, which is kind of significant. So, and the goal is 80% completion.
Of rocks. Like you want to actually finish 80% of the overall rocks of the whole company. Right.
Yeah. So you want to set them, because the goal isn't 100%, right? I mean, if the goal was 100%, then you're probably not stretching too much.
Right. That's right. I see where you're going with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to push a little bit.
And
the expectation is you're going to fail something.
Of course, we want to complete 100% of the rocks in a perfect world.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen, and I think that's why they recommend the 80%, where you're like, if you had 100% all the time, you just weren't dreaming big enough.
Yeah. Yep. 20% of your time for 80% of the results.
And then going back to, nothing fits in a perfect little 13-week box.
Right.
So when you're setting these, as you're thinking about the strategy behind it, again, you want to plan for planning.
Yes.
That sounds dumb.
Well, it's
plan for planning.
But
break sometimes,
it down on a level that we can understand.
Well, yeah. So sometimes it's like, I want to do something and it's going to take 4 months.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe I could stretch it to 6 months and the quality would go a lot higher. And then I could break it into those 2 rock segments.
Yes.
For me, the thing that I struggle with is that balance of, I love to check things off my list. However, on projects, I like to do them well.
Yeah.
And so I struggle with that balance of, that seems a little aggressive. I never like to be too aggressive with the timeline if it's like really involved.
Yeah.
And so I've really landed on, I like the idea of breaking those big projects into 2 increments.
Yeah.
Where they're interdepartmental things, where I'm going to do a lot of research and planning in the first quarter, and then the second quarter, just run.
Exactly.
Execute. And that's why I did this.
Talk a little bit about your cheat sheet you've made.
Mean, I literally, I don't know, I think I went online and got it, and then I made it Berks Homes. I put a Berks Homes logo on it. But it's basically a rock builder. And so all it is, breaking that quarter, those 90 days, into weeks, which is 13 weeks or 12, and it gives you some pointers, what are the milestones and how many weeks it'll take, who needs to be involved for you to complete the rock, and what obstacles does this present. So again, it's making you think, and I'm starting this week, it's making me think about who I need to get involved.
Yeah.
Because that's really where you need to start. If it's outside of you, you need to start the very first thing, who.
Well, the one thing that I wanted to mention too, in stretch goals and goals that are more like assumed that you will do, I always make sure that if one of my rocks is impacting other people, it's one that I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I'm not stretching a goal when it's impacting other people.
Yeah.
I'm only doing a stretch goal when it's impacting myself. Because
that's a good way to put it.
I want that if I have to have a quote unquote failure on a rock, I want that on me, and I don't want it to mess other people up.
Yeah.
So with
Drags people down.
Yeah. So with your planning tool, this is so perfect for something that you spend the first 90 days setting up that plan, understanding who it impacts first, how much time, collaborating with them, seeing if this is when they can fit something of this magnitude into their schedule.
Yeah.
So that is something that I just want to really hit on really hard here. The biggest lesson that I have learned from this whole thing is using a quarter for planning to make sure you can execute on something properly. Like it is, I can't say it enough.
Right. And sometimes if it's something that what we really like is the idea of laying it out long term, with what does my department want to do over the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have various levels of intensity around projects. And then once you just write them down and then kind of put them in some sort of date format of like, okay, Q3, Q4, Q1 next year, that kind of thing, then you can drag and drop the priorities and, either condense them or make them bigger depending on what it is. And so you can easily see how something that I want to get done this quarter, it may actually impact something, not just next quarter, but even the next.
Right.
And then you can really see what exactly needs to be accomplished in the next 90 days. So especially if it all builds on itself.
And we have the answers already on the long-term planning on the VTO because you have your one-year plan, you have your 3-year picture, so then you know how to have that long-term planning in your mind when you're looking at these 90 days.
Yeah, we've done a great job, I think, as an organization to start thinking about those things. Like if we want to improve a process or something or change a software, we're looking at that 3-year picture first.
Right.
And saying, is this going to support an organization of that size or the growth that we're going to see? Don't make a lateral change for these baby reasons.
Right. Right.
Is it scalable? I say that a lot.
Yes.
Is it scalable? And so you're right. That's a great way to think of it. And, even the 10-year target, I mean, you can go all the way to that. And I use that in my head for
the scalable.
Making moves.
Yeah.
Go all the way out. I'm not going to build a rock from here to 2032, but I'm going to think about the stuff that I'm working on to make sure that I'm not wasting my time on something that isn't going to be relevant in 5 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that mindset is really critical because you don't want to put a lot of energy into things that don't make sense in the future.
Yeah, why have a temporary solution when you know where we're going? Make it the permanent one.
Especially, and the permanent solution most likely is like many quarters in a row.
Yeah.
So it goes back to your idea of taking one for planning and, again, doing it really well, feeling good about it. Because execution's so easy when you just have a roadmap.
Right. When you have the plan. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I kind of like this tool, this rock building tool, because
I love it.
Like a baby project plan. So it's saying, instead of looking at the date that it's due at the end and being like, I got time. If you just start, I was thinking of it in terms of starting at the end and then going backwards.
Sure.
And then you end up with an activity for each week that you want to accomplish, just milestones.
Right.
And then it's much more manageable.
Yeah. I've got time is my kryptonite in life.
Well, please.
That's why I love this.
I mean, I made this last quarter, but I didn't use it. So I'm going to use it this year or this quarter. So let me go back to SMART.
Yeah, please.
So this is how you would define a good rock. Specific, what exactly do you want to accomplish? Measurable, how will you know you met your goal? Attainable, is this goal something you can do? Relevant, why is your goal important to you? And timely, what is the timeline for your goal? I think the combination of those phrases and those words, make you really clear at the end when you're like, okay, I'm done. That's good.
You have an actual deliverable when you write it smartly.
Yep. And then that's the last thing I wrote. Write the rock. What is the deliverable?
Oh, I didn't even remember that.
So,
okay.
And that's really hard in the beginning.
It's so hard.
And you're like, I want to just, because you and we just want to be like, I just kind of want to do this thing.
I'll get it done. I'll let you know.
I know when it's done.
No.
But what's so helpful, because, you're sitting in a meeting and you're like, gun to your head, trying to come up with a rock.
Yeah.
And you're just like, bleh.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the next week you're like, what I really need to do exactly?
Mm-hmm.
So if you write it smartly,
I don't know.
Smarty,
a smarty rock,
whatever, then you can really know at all times exactly what you're trying to get done. And it helps when somebody else can see it.
Yeah.
And they're like, I know exactly what you're going to deliver at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, rocks. Not our best, This is not these are not.
Talk about being stretched.
Yeah.
My stretch goal is doing rocks every quarter.
Right.
Of my life.
That's a goal.
Mm-hmm.
That is a rock. Rocks are my rock. Because, and why we say this, why we make fun of ourselves all the time, is because we're naturally driven and not really that organized.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't think of goals as something that, rocks, goals, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We don't think of those things as something that isn't necessary. It's just we always assume we're going to get stuff done that we need to.
Right. I have a little audacity.
Yeah.
When it comes to assuming that I'll be able to get something done. Well, I'll figure it out.
Right.
That's not how we can operate at this point in time.
No.
Not.
So I'm trying to be positive here because it's important. This works for us.
Yeah.
Because it
gives some
forces
structure.
Planning.
Mm-hmm.
We like to run and gun and do things on the fly. However, we both know putting in the time over the last couple years has been really positive and energizing to, run through the planning process. And people get hyped about it.
Yeah.
When you deliver that.
The nice thing is it's only 8 hours a week. It's not like we're being pinned down for the entire work week and having to operate like at this level 24/7. It's 20% of your time is spent structured. That is, anyone can accomplish that.
And I look back at the accomplishments, and I say this with a lot of confidence. I don't know what percentage wouldn't have gotten done without this process, but it's a good percentage. It's a good percentage of things because you can't accomplish things unless you write it down and point towards it every day.
Exactly.
You can't be really accurate in your planning unless you do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you just have to do it.
Exactly.
So I have a high degree of confidence in this moving us forward in our long-term vision.
Oh, yeah. We've already seen it.
One step at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's part of the gig.
Yeah.
And we embrace it.
Moving on to the shout-outs.
Shout-outs. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I have one this week again. We had the opportunity on that Thursday last week when my team got together. We were able to meet up with the technology team in the afternoon.
How cool.
And they have a handful of remote employees. These are guys anywhere from help desk support, tech guys, to software developers. And I don't know, there's maybe 10 of them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go out to our job sites.
Right.
They don't see, unless it's proactive and intentional, they don't get to see what we build every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really cool. We're the operations team, so we hosted, some job site tours and got the opportunity to explain just little things that we take for granted that they don't know. And most people, 99% of people don't know what goes into building a home and why things are done a certain way. And Mike Pavey, our VP of operations, who loves to teach and just loves to explain everything, he was able to just get on his little soapbox and just talk
his
about
podium.
Yes, he had his podium out with his microphone. I love Mike. And anyway, so we went to one of our communities, Cumberland Preserve, which I believe has roughly 25 houses under construction.
Wow.
At different stages. It's single-family homes and duplexes. and they're both like super hot right now in that community. And my shout out is Scott Hardy, the superintendent there. And his face was on the presentation that Brian had at the company meeting multiple times. So that was the reminder. But Scott was running a very clean, well-oiled operation.
He
out
runs
there.
a tight ship.
His military background probably helps him. But he's the boss, and it's very clear. There's something about his ownership of his domain that is so great to see.
That's awesome.
Because, that's his job site. Everybody's got to run things by him. And even with all that apparent chaos of having 25 houses under construction, I mean, it was hard to drive.
Because of how busy it was in there.
I mean, it's like, there's Pettybones, there's the street sweeper was in there because it was a Thursday. It was just crazy. You can tell when somebody owns their role and their job with confidence like Scott does, it really makes a difference. Yeah. And taking pride in it. And I've always appreciated Scott in his role as what we would call Superintendent 3. So he's kind of like the regional mentor to other superintendents, and he's a leader in his role. Even though he probably only has 1 or 2 people reporting to him, he's a leader among his peers. Yeah. And I appreciate the way that he goes about business, and he takes it very seriously. He's a great guy.
It was shout out. It was perfect. This ties in perfectly to Brian Rodriguez, his presentation. We was talking about the importance of both the metrics and the culture. Yeah. And again, that's Scott.
Scott's
perfect example.
Off the charts metrics. We have
the people love him. Every customer, he's a customer favorite.
Yeah, and he also is one of the, I haven't looked in a couple weeks, if not the top scoring superintendent in the company. Always right there. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. He deserves a shout out, and I appreciate everything he does.
Same. That's a great one. I love it. Yeah. I'm going to keep the challenge pretty consistent and simple this week. You're going to have to do it anyway. Let's set some SMART rocks. Yeah. Let's achieve all 5 points of the SMART and make sure we're really clear on what the deliverable is going to be. Tom will really appreciate it because he keeps track of all the rocks in the entire company. Yeah. God bless him.
And I'm going to add to the challenge.
Oh, okay.
As you're setting the SMART rock, reach out to somebody, communicate this week if in your head that person has a piece of your rock.
Well, that goes to hitting all 5 points. Is it attainable? You have to know what resources you do and don't have in order to complete your rock. Right. So a big piece of that is that communication and collaboration with anyone else that's going to be impacted by you reaching that goal.
I'm just giving them a hack, Katie. Just giving them a shortcut. Call somebody.
That's okay, fine. I just made it too complicated. Yeah. Sorry.
All right.
Okay, thanks
That's
everybody.
Have a great week.